Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning is finally out. I finally saw it in IMAX last night, and just like Tom Cruise asked us, I trusted him going into this. This was easily one of my most anticipated films of the year, given how consistent this franchise has been through 8 films now. Spoiler alert, I really like this movie a lot. I think it's very good. And so, in my opinion, they're 7 for 8, the only stinker kind of being the Limp Bizkit slow-mo one. And this is the final film in the franchise, and while I don't think it is the best film in the franchise, I do think it provides a really good Mission Impossible movie, while also just being a really strong closer. This film does unfortunately kind of fall into the same flaws as the previous film, because it is a part 2, where there's kind of this constant reliance on exposition and explaining the threat in the entity and the use of the key. The words "the key" and "the entity" are said so many times in these past 2 movies, and there's so much exposition constantly needing to be explained to the audience, where it also just feels like there's a lack of trust with the audience themselves. So for the first hour, where there's all this exposition constantly explaining the threat, and then there's also a lot of reliance on flashbacks, the pacing and the writing definitely struggles early on, and I think really slows this film down. The film is almost 3 hours and definitely doesn't need to be. And I think if this movie decided to kind of trust the audience, dull down the exposition, and also not constantly be shoving flashbacks in our faces, the first hour of this movie would have flowed a lot better. So it is a little bit of a bumpy start for that first hour, but once you get past that, it just turns right back into being a really good Mission Impossible movie. Christopher McQuarrie continues to direct these action sequences very well, whether it's the big stunt set pieces or even the more hand-to-hand stuff. All the production aspects of this movie are very good as well. The score continues to be incredible, raises the stake throughout all the action sequences. The cinematography is excellent here. It always is throughout all these movies, but it really shines here. And then you also have just consistently great production design for these big scale set pieces, and everything just looks incredible. The entire supporting cast is great, even though they actually seem to get a little bit less play than the rest of the movies. They continue to be great, handling their action sequences, their little moments very well. And I think what's great about this movie is it definitely falls into the idea of this is the last movie, so we really need to up the stakes, and you definitely feel that. There's a lot more stakes, there's a lot more going on, and I think also how they handled the threat in this film versus the last film feels a bit more easy to understand, and at the same time it actually feels more dangerous. And I think once this movie gets going, it really gets going, and you get really behind what is happening. The story's very interesting, I really like all the characters, and then when these action set pieces are happening, they're absolutely incredible. There's 2 huge ones. The one that is being shown a lot is the big plane sequence, which is absolutely jaw-dropping, and what I really appreciated about this was it's actually shot very well. There's not an over-reliance on cleaning stuff up with visual effects, and everything actually feels dangerous and shot in camera. I think sometimes we see these scenes behind the scenes, and they actually look way more dangerous behind the scenes than they actually do in the film because stuff is sometimes cleaned up, but that's not the case here, thankfully. There's also a great underwater submarine sequence that goes for a while. It's almost entirely without dialogue. Very little sound design, but enough of a score that keeps this constant tension throughout, and the whole sequence is absolutely incredible. And of course, you kind of go to this movie to see Tom Cruise do these absolutely amazing things, and you gotta give him 100% credit. His performances are incredible, but he fully commits to these action sequences in the best possible way. They all look absolutely incredible, and seeing him actually do them, it's what makes them work so well. The film's full of tension, suspense, and emotion. You really get behind these characters and what they're doing, the mission that is at stake. And when you're watching all these things happen, it doesn't feel like turn your brain off, here's some cool action. It's here's cool action, there's a lot going on, you care about these characters, and that's what really makes all these movies consistently great. So overall, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning has a bit of a bumpy start and has a lot of exposition that I think kind of screws with the pacing, and the story doesn't feel very well told in the beginning, but once it gets going, it just turns into a great Mission Impossible movie with a great cast of characters, a really high stakes story, and incredible action set pieces that are truly jaw-dropping with Tom Cruise at the front of it all. And that is why I am going to give it a flat 9 out of 10.